post, in the words of Stanley Phillips, is that means of communication by which messages of joy or otherwise are passed from one end of the world to the other, utilizing in the process every known means of transport, often in circumstances of adventurous difficulty. From its ancient and humble beginning, the postal system has today developed into one of the most effective instruments of modern civilization. It is classified as a home where postage stamps are bought and letters pass through. The place of postal service in the communication system cannot be underestimated.
The post office is just an office where members of the public go to transact all their postal transactions, buying of stamps, posting letters, buying of postal orders, registering their letters, sending money orders.
In the ancient world, postal service resulted from the discovery of writing that marked the beginning and development of trade, which in turn led to the growth of cities and empires. It is on record that messenger services were first inspired by the rising administrative needs of the ancient empires. It developed in Egypt and Persian empires between the 1580s BC and 550 BC, and later in the Old Assyrian Empire at about 671 BC. By the late 13th century, commerce, town life and education had started to re-emerge in Europe. In Nigeria, postal services were first introduced in the year 1852. The nation's first ever contact with the then colonial British government was in Lagos, Nigeria. That move innovated the spirit of the delivery of mails and other related services, which led to a signed agreement between Her Majesty's government and MacGregor Laird of the Company of African Merchants for the conveyance of Her Majesty mails from the United Kingdom to the west coast of Africa.
Even though there were talks to introduce this service in 1851, no concrete agreement was reached until 1852. In the agreement, which was signed on 29th January 1852, MacGregor Laird undertook to convey at a speed of not less than 8 knots an hour Her Majesty's mails from England to Fanadopo in West Africa. Vessels to convey these mails were to call at Lagos, Badagry, Bonny, Calabar and Cameroon on both the outward and homeward voyages, and the company was to convey, deliver and receive at each of the ports mentioned in this agreement all such of Her Majesty's mails as shall or were to be delivered thereat.
Since the inception of postal service in Nigeria in 1852, mail service remained its major preoccupation. In 1867, however, money order was introduced to facilitate financial transactions in Lagos as a substitute for the non-availability of a bank. For the period of 2 decades, between 1852 and 1872, postal services remained very modest in terms of area coverage. The post, without its postage stamp, to many is like soup without salt. The hand-stamped stamps with the inscription "Paid in Lagos" were just introduced to the Nigerian postal system in 1859. However, it was not until April 1892 when the British definite stamps with the inscription "British Protectorate or River" were first supplied. Those stamps were in 5 denominations and were publicly acclaimed for being rich in philatelic value.
I think that's the beauty of stamps, because they also become documentation symbols. They become symbol of unity for a country, they become historical symbols. And if you look at some of these, you will find when the Queen was still the head of Nigerian government or the Nigerian people, and you'll find her there. And that's how we knew the Queen. Most of us had not been to England until late 60s or 70s. So we didn't meet the Queen unless through the coins or through the stamp. And you had a feeling of, okay, I have a link with this woman. At least she knows I exist because I use her stamp to send. And by the time we now started having leaders, that's when the 3 major leaders, started having their own stamps. Chief Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe was then the president, and Tafawa Balewa.
To ensure that the memory of Festac is sustained and the memory of CBAC is equally put alive, and the thinking was that if we have a memorabilia in form of a postage stamp which had been used historically for such purposes, it will be in the interest not just of CBAC and Festac, but the interest of Black and African people all over the world. And so we approached NIPOST to explore the possibility of joining hands with them to make a commemorative one-time postage stamp, and NIPOST readily gave its consent.
Between 1891 and 1899, post offices were introduced in places as Akasa, Burutu, Ibadan Abeokuta, Ikorodu, Ijebu-Ode, and Lokoja in 1899. Between 1899 and the year 1907, 21 post offices had been built in the then Northern Protectorate of Nigeria. The amalgamation of Northern and Southern Protectorates of Nigeria by Lord Lugard on the 1st of January 1914 brought about the establishment of a uniform stamp policy for Nigeria as a country. With great aptitude in the strategic interests of Britain, growth recorded in trade in Lagos and its hinterlands translated to the resultant development of postal services. As from 1886, the British government had built a general post office in Lagos, while Sir George Tupman Goldie of the Royal Niger Company built another post office at Calabar to serve the All Rivers Niger Company. Since no mail moves faster than the transportation over which it is carried, in pre-colonial and pre-independence of Nigeria, mails for the country were made up in London, Liverpool and Dublin, New York, and at several places on the continent, and hundreds of bags were shipped every fortnight. The West African Airways Corporation played an important role for the speedy transmission of mail, as it greatly complemented the older methods of moving mail by road and rail.
The network precisely has not changed over the years. Precisely from that 1955 to date, we are having 3,500 kilometer rail network, and the railway system runs diagonally from the coast to the hinterland. I mean, from Lagos to Kano and Port Harcourt to Kano. Additional branch lines were constructed between Bauchi and Maiduguri. That was, I think, 1964.
The advent of air transportation introduced another dimension to mail transportation in Nigeria, as the impetus it brought helped to complete the triune transportation modes of sea, land and air transportation in Nigeria. The 1914 amalgamation of northern and southern Nigeria necessitated an amalgamation of the Department of Post and Telegraph of both the northern and southern Nigeria. At that time, the cornerstone of a good postal system were to be speedy, reliable, regular, and economical in its operation. The job of the Postal Services branch of the Department of Post and Telegraph was not to merely meet the public's demand, but also to anticipate development, and had to be ready with new services before the public has realized the need for them. The Nigerian Postal Service is 100% owned by the federal government of Nigeria. The promulgation of Decree 18 of 1987 by the federal government made NIPOST an extra-ministerial department with supervisory authority invested in the Ministry of Communications and the Postmaster General as the Chief Executive Officer of the organization. However, on the 1st of July 1992, the Nigerian Postal Service, NIPOST, was granted a parastatal status and provides the organization a far greater control of its own destiny than ever experienced. The objectives for the commercialization of NIPOST services in 1992 were to restructure and rationalize the Postal Service to ensure an effective, cost-conscious and goal-oriented management and staff whose future is linked with the fortunes of the postal organization, to undertake a comprehensive review of the existing accounting and information system of the postal services with a view to installing and maintaining modern and effective accounting systems, to reorientate the staff and management towards a new horizon of performance improvement that will enable the postal service to develop, operate and offer reliable services to the public in the most efficient and profitable manner. NIPOST management embarked on a general review of its mail routing nationwide. On road, a platform was introduced for the involvement of private sector participation on haulage of mails on long-distance destination through the private public transporter against the traditional use of wholly owner official mail vehicles or MVs. The volume of mails handled in Nigeria was 537.5 million, 578.2 million and 621 million in 1994, 1995 and 1996 respectively. In its drive at attaining high standard in area of quality service, NIPOST had to suspend the use of franking machine early 1996 due to large-scale abuse by vendors and its misuse for sending scam letters to dupe members of the public, thereby tarnishing the reputation of the post. The loss of credibility of mails emanating from Nigeria necessitated the restriction of the use of franking machine to only domestic mails and its replacement by the computer-operated one for international mails. The expedited mail service, Speed Post, was introduced in 1986 as a courier arm of the Nigerian Post Service for time-sensitive mails item at the international level. The Nigerian Postal Service introduced into its mainstream of product diversification the electronic mail or email service as an electronic and computer-oriented information transmission device. The pilot scheme of the project started at 8 centers in Abuja, Lagos, Kano, Jos, Kaduna, Onitsha, Warri and Port Harcourt. It later extended to additional 10 centers by the end of 1995. Since the establishment of NIPOST and government trust towards its commercialization, the development of its infrastructure to enhance its mail handling became pivotal for management to address. A total of 153 vehicles that were earlier ungrounded were rehabilitated, while a total of 22 motor vehicles, 220 motorcycles and 150 bicycles were procured less than a decade of its establishment. Mail processing was similarly enhanced by the repairs of the stamp cancelling machine and mail conveyor belt in some head offices in the country. One of the mandates given by the federal government to the Nigerian Postal Service was to ensure a vibrant revenue generation drive and prudent financial management, finance being a major barometer for measuring the performance of an organization. NIPOST embarked on an aggressive drive to meeting this great mandate of government. In 1994, NIPOST recorded a total revenue of over 459 million naira, 572 million naira in 1995. By 1996, the total revenue of NIPOST had risen to over 900 million naira, representing 65% of the estimated budget for the year. One of the measures taken by the federal government to combat problems facing the public servants in Nigeria was the introduction of pension schemes. As a follow-up to the federal government's policy decision to review the management of pension schemes of parastatals funded by it, the Nigerian Postal Service, on the 16th of April 1997, inaugurated a 10-member board of trustees for pension matters to alleviate the sufferings usually encountered by retirees. As a commercial enterprise, which is translating from previous labor-intensive to one that is capital-intensive nature, the process of rationalization is usually mandatory. The Nigerian Postal Service had to disengage a substantial number of staff from its previous 24,000 staff strength. The post, according to Voltaire, is the links connecting all affairs, all negotiations. By its means, absent becomes present. The post in Nigeria first aligned with the international body when in 1879 the colonial arms of the post in Lagos joined the World Postal Union, re-entered in 1929 and finally in 1961 became the 86th member nation of the Universal Postal Union. Efforts to transform the Nigerian Postal Service into a critical national infrastructure that can make significant contribution to socio-economic development began in the early 1990s.
The formal post office that came to Nigeria from Britain came through the commercial companies, what is now, especially what is now UAC and Lever Brothers. They were the first to introduce the commercial post office into this country. And that is why Lokoja has such an important position. Lagos has such an important position in the history of Nigerian Post. Calabar has such an important position. all those Boni, Nembe, and or Calabri and all that, they have important roles in the history of this country. And coming further inland, even Ilori was a point of contact. Mina, Zungeru, all these have important features in the post office because they were centers of commerce. And I can assure you the post office came into this country as an infrastructure of commerce.
Prior to this period, NIPOS operated under severe constraints due to unclear and fluid legal status. Apart from inadequate funding and lack of authority to use its internally generated revenue, its training and management information capabilities were limited.
I wish to remind all of us that the challenges before us as an organization are daunting, but surely not insurmountable. I therefore call on us to redouble our efforts and commitment towards the survival and growth of the organization.
Given the fact that resources available to the organization are scarce, the management took the option of collaborating with the private sector, a venture which has been yielding very positive results.
Management, in conjunction with the consultants engaged by the Bureau for Public Enterprises, has painstakingly commenced the systematic restructuring of the services of the organization in order to reposition them towards realizing the organizational full potential.
A case in point remains the National Mail Route Network, involving private transporters whose dedicated vehicles carry out mail distribution on designated routes.
When I came in as a postmaster general in 2006, and I was evaluating what my predecessors have done, right from AK to late Postmaster General Argungu. I now saw some of the challenges that we were having. In fact, even moving mails to our neighboring countries. For instance, going to Benin Republic, it is something that you could do by foot or by bicycle, particularly if you are in Badagry, those towns that are bordering those towns. The same thing with Niger Republic. For those of us that come from Kebbi, we move in and out of Niger every day, either by foot or by bicycle or by whatever. The same thing with the northern part of the eastern part of this country, or the northeastern part of this country, to Chad, to Cameroon, and even from the south part of this country to also Chad. But it will surprise everybody to know that by 2006, mails going to Chad, mails going to Cameroon, mails going to Benin Republic, spend upward of 3 months in Nigeria before we could deliver them. Why? Because sometimes we had to send these mails back, to France before they will find their way back to these countries.
By the second quarter of 2009, NIPOS was able to record 92.5% delivery of all mail items posted in the country within 72 hours nationwide. Some modifications were made in 2010 with the extension of the network to some local government headquarters, which hitherto were not covered. The introduction of the postcode system in Nigeria in 1986 also represents another milestone in the efforts of the Nigerian Postal Service at improving the efficiency of mail delivery in the country. The system delineated Nigeria into 9 postcode zones, each of which is identified by a distinct postcode.
And I thank God for that. I was one of the people who started the postcode work in NIPOS. By the time we started, people did not understand us. What I was telling them, let's continue. People will understand, I'm going to educate them. So it is our duty to train them, to let them know, to use them. Let them know that even if you don't forget your address, just put postcode that your letter can get to where you are sending it, because that code involves a lot of things.
To ensure efficiency in mail delivery and mechanization of mail processing, the management took a bold step in launching the first edition of the Nigerian Postcode Directory in November 2000. At present, the third edition is in circulation, while collation of updated data for compilation of the fourth edition is in progress. Security measures introduced since 2000, in addition with collaboration with agencies like Serious Organized Crime Agency of the United Kingdom, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Nigeria's Customs, and the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, have continued to yield positive results. Today, it will be right to say that mail pilfering and dumping belong to the past of NIPO's history. Alhaji Mahmoud Yayale Ahmed, Secretary to the Government of the Federation from 2007 to 2011, who represented the late President Umar Musa Yar'Adua, had described the national addressing as an initiative that has the capacity to fast-track the federal government's transformation agenda and put Nigeria in tandem with what is obtained in other developed parts of the world. Consequently, a National Steering Committee on Addressing was constituted on the 4th of May 2009 by the Minister with the objective of formulating a policy framework on addressing as a critical infrastructure that will be used for national planning and development, and also to design a uniform street naming, house numbering, and address database for Nigeria, which will be used for planning and other multi-sectoral purposes. A draft policy document on addressing standard was therefore submitted to the present Minister of Communication Technology on the 7th of May 2010. Management also embarked on rehabilitation of post offices through internally generated revenue as a means of restoring public confidence in the services rendered by these offices. For those requiring huge capital for their remodeling, NIPOS partnered with private developers on build, operate, and transfer. An example being the Adiola Odeku Post Office at Victoria Island in Lagos. Automation of postal operation commenced in 2007 with the deployment of ICT infrastructure across post offices nationwide. At present, a total of 350 very small aperture terminal facilities have been deployed and installed in major post offices across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. Since joining the Universal Postal Union in 1961, the Nigerian Postal Administration has been committed to ensuring the preservation of the integrity of the International Postal Network through its involvement in the UPU programs. Nigeria's prominent roles in the world body have been generously recognized by its election into the following principal positions in the UPU: elected as member of the Council of Administration in 2004, elected as chairman of the Finance Committee from 2004 to 2008, elected as member of the Postal Operation Council in 2008, elected as chairman of the Interconnectivity Group of the Council of Administration in 2008, elected vice chairman of Committee 2 of the Postal Operation Council in 2008, and elected as chairman of the Remuneration Group of Committee 2. Similar and numerous other strides are being recorded by the administration of the African continental level through its membership of the Pan-African Postal Union and most recently the West African Postal Conference. Credit should go to the present leadership of NIPOS for not only sustaining the achievements it inherited from its predecessors, but also for working assiduously to further improve them. Through the re-engineering efforts of the management of the Nigerian Postal Service, Nigeria is today a household name, a trailblazer amongst the Committee of Nations, a force to be reckoned with within the portals of the postal industry. Former President Chief Olusegun Obasanjo once acclaimed that the achievements of NIPOS through the innovations of his management have vindicated his administration's belief that with time, Nigeria will take its rightful place amongst the Committee of Nations.